Mobile games making it to PC is always something that I kind of tend to stay away from if I can because, well, I gotta be honest, it might just be a bit of a bias of my own, but I don't have a huge amount of faith in the mobile market, which is sort of like the Wild West of game markets as it stands right now, actually producing worthwhile ports to PC. It's very rare that some games that have come from there have actually been really, really good, because generally speaking, they are, of course, on the mobile market first, which means they're designed for the things that you see around the mobile market, and when they are actually brought to PC, some of those design choices just aren't compatible, and we end up with kind of neutered feeling games, I guess, for lack of a better word, where like a lot of mechanics and things just all sort of feel like they've fallen short. And, very short play sessions, very obvious, like where there were microtransactions, but they were sort of haphazardly removed and not really replaced with anything, and stuff like that, and it just always feels a little bit questionable to me. However, if you're looking for some great mobile games, take a look at it when it happens the other way around. Games that actually come from PC to mobile, those tend to be pretty awesome, actually. Like, for instance, Armello has a really fantastic mobile version. But anyway, onto the subject of this preview video here. As it turns out, I am a little bit interested when someone mentions a game that I've seen on the mobile store occasionally and is very highly rated on the mobile store. It has like very nice reviews and things. And the developers have said that for about a year they've thought about, porting it and haven't been sure about how to do it, and have worked on changing the game in various ways to the point where when it actually gets to the PC, it's going to be sort of an upgraded version with some very different ideas in terms of how its balance and things works. And they just want to sort of port it to PC in a new way, with more than just a fresh coat of paint, but actually all sort of mechanics and things like that. So that is exactly what's happened with Vampire's Fall Origins. I was initially just kind of attracted to it because I had seen the game here and there on the Play Store, and I've heard that it was actually quite a good game. I'd never actually played it myself, but I'd heard very good things about it. And when they actually announced that they have been wanting to port it to Steam, to PC for a while, and the developer is actually like a fan of PC games. That's sort of where most of their gaming takes place, so they obviously know a lot about how a game on PC should work, and they just haven't felt that it was sort of, I think they mentioned that they felt that it wasn't exactly deserved that it would come to PC, as in like they didn't know exactly how to actually do it justice. That actually makes me really curious about it, and it also kind of helps me understand that they have a certain, understanding of the actual PC market, and they want to make sure to actually do it justice. They want to make sure to do it right, so they've taken their time to hopefully do that. So that's why I'm actually taking a look at this, because it seems to be one of those rarer examples of a developer that most definitely knows what they're doing in terms of porting a mobile game to the PC market and actually having it, work correctly, having the mechanics line up with what a PC user would expect. And I've been very pleasantly surprised by this game, honestly. Now, do not take this as a review, of course. This is a preview build. The game is not out yet. It comes out the 31st, which is Friday, at the time of recording this video, so that's when it actually officially releases on Steam. I'll, of course, link you in the description below, as always, if you want to check it out or wishlist it or just kind of keep an eye on it. But what it actually is an RPG. It is an open world RPG, and that's actually one of the first things that I was impressed by, was the fact that the open world is very open and has a lot to see and do. A lot of mobile games suffer from, like play on the toilet syndrome, I guess you could call it, where they're based around very short bursts of gameplay, and you're meant to sort of stop shortly after that and pick up again later or the next day and play some more. They're not meant to be played for long periods of time, which is one of the main issues that I have with a lot of mobile games coming to PC, is because since that's so ingrained in the actual mechanics of the game itself, you can't really change that. So the PC version ends up feeling like you're supposed to play it the same way, which just isn't conducive to how most people play PC games. But this game doesn't feel that way. In fact, I'm assuming, like I said, I haven't played the mobile version, I'm assuming even the mobile version is meant to be played in longer sessions if you want, because the world is very open and there's a huge amount of quests and things to find and do, even this little unmarked side quests and special fights and stuff that you can find just by exploring. The game very much rewards exploration, and its world is, although quite open, it doesn't feel spread too much. It doesn't feel as if it is spread very thin with very little content just over a very large area. It feels as if it's actually fairly dense with stuff to see and find. Stuff to come back to, stuff to remember where it was, so that when you're a higher level you won't get totally slaughtered, all sorts of stuff like that, and it feels very much like a proper open world RPG. It's a 2D sort of top-down, or almost isometric projection-ish RPG in terms of when you're exploring the world. However, combat takes place on this, as you're seeing right now, this turn-based combat screen. And the combat is actually pretty neat because I guess you could say it's fairly simple, but it's not like super simple. It actually has a fair amount of strategy to it because you are a vampire. And as a vampire, you have all sorts of various powers, and you can equip lots of weapons and other pieces of gear that will give you different abilities. And these abilities are, you gotta learn how to use them. You gotta learn how to actually apply them in combat. It doesn't feel like one of those games that you can just hit auto combat or auto resolve and just sort of skip the combat portion. The combat is definitely a main focus of the game, and there is no like skip or anything like that, so it doesn't feel like it's meant to just sort of pad out the time. It actually feels like a well implemented combat system, which of course I very much approve of. And the combat involves weapon attacks. You have various different weapons that you can find and equip, and your various powers, things like swarming bat swarms and bolts of elemental energy that you can choose what element they are, so that you can sort of take advantage of different weaknesses in different areas of the world, to stuff like the bite, which is extremely useful because it does good damage and heals you, and some other abilities like that. And you also have this sort of focus meter that fills up, depending on your talents and things, it fills up different amounts each turn, and you can use focus to use your special attacks. And also every now and then you'll get a combo turn, which is pretty cool. It allows you to actually do multiple actions in one turn. And just as long as you have the focus for those actions, you can choose as many as you want. Just queue them up in a big line and then execute them all in a row for like huge damage, or a kind of neat combo of like sharpening your weapon and then reducing the enemy's armor and then hitting them with a huge stab or something like that. You can sort of make your own combos, which is neat. Honestly, I like that sort of thing. And what's also pretty cool is the weapons themselves have their own combo attacks. Different weapons will have different attacks, so that during a combo turn, you'll find that your overall weapon commands change from like basic attacks to larger attacks, like huge swings and swipes that can sometimes do different types of damage. So you'll have like piercing damage versus slashing damage, for instance, on like long swords and great swords. And you'll also have some weapons like katanas, for instance, that can do bleeding attacks, or daggers that have poison combo attacks, and other special like unique weapons later on, like this big lightning greatsword thing that has an actual lightning elemental slash that it can do during combo turns. So the combos themselves actually do change up how you fight, which is a really nice feature, and it helps to add to the variety of the combat, and like I said, make it not feel throwaway or like something that you're meant to skip. It actually feels like it is relatively strategic. It is definitely like a JRPG combat system, but done quite well, in my opinion. The world is pretty interesting. It's got a lot of different places for you to go. Like I said, it's got a lot of side quests and stuff, and not all of them are actually marked. Sometimes it's nice to be rewarded just for wandering into an area that you're probably not supposed to be yet and just finding something cool. And that's definitely something that this game does quite often. You'll find all sorts of different puzzles and side quests and stuff in unmarked areas that you can just sort of happen upon and do and get cool rewards from, which is awesome. I'll always appreciate stuff like that because I'm very much like an explorer when I play games. I like to uncover every little stone, go into every nook and cranny that I can possibly find just to see what's there, and I always appreciate when games actually do in fact have things there for you to find. I know this is a bit of a weird comparison, but I just couldn't shake this feeling in my head, this certain comparison. The game world and overall style of exploration kind of reminds me of Two Worlds 2. I know that probably doesn't make a lot of sense just looking at it because it's a very different type of game, except for it's like a dark fantasy RPG. That's about the only thing that's like similar visually. But really, the way that the towns are laid out, with each town you can sort of happen across, and they all have different sort of tiers of equipment at different expense levels that you can come across, and new side quests in each town, and the way that you sort of go between different areas of the world, just walking between them, sometimes on your own time, sometimes as part of the main quest, and finding all these extra little areas and stuff like that. It all just kind of reminds me of my time playing Two Worlds 2 and sort of happening upon a new village and being excited to see what sorts of new equipment that their shops will have as opposed to the previous shops, and then discovering that they're like $1 billion and I have to go and grind in the forest for a while. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Like I said, I totally understand that people are kind of confused by that comparison because obviously gameplay-wise it does not look anything like the Two Worlds games, but just something about the way the world is constructed and the way that it feels to go between the villages and find new equipment and new side quests and new shops with new tiers of things. That's the feeling that I kept getting in my head whenever I was doing this. As for the world itself, like, what all can you do? There's definitely quite a bit to find. As I mentioned, there are of course lots of villages and towns and cities that you can happen across, each with their own large cadre of NPCs standing around with exclamation points above their heads waiting for you to talk to them and do something for them. And of course there are other, like I mentioned, unmarked quests, but you also have stuff like dialogue systems with the NPCs, and of course there are some areas that just involve you interacting with things that you weren't necessarily told to in order to solve environmental puzzles and stuff to unlock new areas and get new pieces of equipment and encounter new quests and the like. And the dialogue is actually pretty good in this game, honestly. It's got a sense of humor, but it doesn't seem like it's trying too hard to be funny, if that makes sense. It's like it knows that it's funny and it tries to make like silly dialogue, but it doesn't try to do it with every single NPC to the point of exhaustion, to the point where you expect the jokes and stuff like that. Like sometimes just funny things happen and then it's sort of back to being serious again. It's actually pretty good dialogue in my opinion. I think it's surprisingly well written. That's something that I wasn't expecting. I was expecting it to have this sort of a fairly basic, like a dark fantasy vampire story, but it really doesn't. It's actually quite a bit different, and the way that you can interact with a lot of the NPCs can get pretty funny. Like, for instance, there's one NPC that you have to go to have him sign a book, and he's just going on and on about how great of a person he is and how he's this magnanimous, amazing individual, and he asks you if you want to know how he came to be such a charitable, wonderful person, and you get 4 dialogue options, and all of them say no. That's all you can tell him, just no, actually no, and just sort of leave, which is pretty funny. It's just little moments like that that make the game's writing actually feel like it's got a pretty good sense of humor that isn't actually trying really hard to constantly be funny. It's just funny when it needs to be, which is nice. There is one negative aspect that I found as far as this is of course a preview. I haven't been super far into the game yet, but there is one thing that has sort of annoyed me, and that's the potion system. The potion system is very strange. You have 4 slots, you can get a 5th, but that requires pretty heavy investment into a certain skill tree to get to. So you will, generally speaking, have 4 potion slots, and you can craft potions. It doesn't take materials or money, it just takes time, and you will have them crafting as you're exploring around the world. And you can only access the crafting menu when you're in a settlement, which makes a fair bit of sense. But that does mean if you have the sense of mind to actually start crafting potions before you leave, because your 4 slots are already full, you actually can't grab those potions once they're finished, even though they're already done. You have to go back to a settlement in order to open the potion window, even though you've already crafted them, which is sort of weird because of how limiting the potion inventory already is. And the fact that potions are not just health, they're also things like upping the encounter rate, and they're even your fast travel system, which is very important because of how large the world is. So the potion system feels very oddly limiting in several ways, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, to be honest. I don't quite understand it. You can't even drink potions in combat. They're only for out-of-combat use. So why your inventory for potions is so limited, why you can't store them in the rest of your inventory, why you can't store them in your house, or access the potions you've already crafted, even if you're not allowed to craft any more, that all just kind of, it feels very weird to me. So as far as complaints, that is my one major complaint, is that the potion system just kind of confuses me, to be honest. I don't quite understand why it's so limited. As for PC-specific upgrades, it looks better. It has higher quality art assets and everything. It just looks, in general, higher quality. And you also have other things like the balance has been changed for the PC version, and the interface, of course, is a little bit different. It has controller support if you want. It has mouse support, so it's optimized for actual PC controls. It just has been changed in meaningful, noticeable ways to make it actually fit for the PC platform. It isn't just a straight port with no considerations whatsoever, so I appreciate that. So really, that's my preview of Vampire's Fall Origins. It's actually a really interesting sort of vampire RPG. It's a lot of fun, and it's surprisingly large once you actually get into it. I would actually recommend taking a look at it, or at least keeping an eye on the store page. So yeah, count me surprised. Thank you very much for actually allowing me access to this and surprising me with how high quality it actually is, and kind of dispelling some of my biases against the mobile market coming to PC. And yeah, that's that. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.